Welcome in. Greg Davis with you, Priority Talk Radio and Podcast, and you are in for a treat today as we do a very special edition of Priority Talk as we talk about the truth behind predatory gambling and gambling operators. We're going to do that with my friend Les Bernal is here. He is lives in Massachusetts. We'll let him tell you much more about himself as we go forward, but he is the national director, the executive director of Stop Predatory Gambling and the Stop Predatory Gambling Foundation, which is also carrying out the campaign for gambling-free kids here across the United States, lobbying Congress on the dangers of predatory gambling. And I'm honored to serve as a board member on this national organization, and we are thrilled to have Les Bernal here in Alabama with us, and he's doing some speaking in different places all around our state. And so, Les, now we've been together today, but always good to have you with us.
It's an honor to be here.
You have been on this show numerous times over the years, but always by phone because you live quite a ways off.
I do. I'm fortunate to be in town for a few days and getting a chance to meet a lot of great Alabama leaders who are taking this issue on of predatory gambling as a major priority, as it deserves to be.
Yeah. Now, tell folks a little bit of your background with this issue and just sort of some of your history and why you're so passionate about this.
Yeah, sure. So I guess on a initial level, I'm a parent of two kids. Both of them are teenagers now. I worked in politics for a number of years, but it was really through my work as a chief of staff in the Massachusetts Senate, where I worked for a short time for a state senator who was opposed to casino gambling coming into my state. And it was one of those issues where the more I learned about the issue, I couldn't believe we were doing this, because on the surface, there's very little public understanding of what casino gambling is and what these extreme forms of commercialized gambling represent. And so it wasn't until really 2004 when the New York Times Magazine did a cover story on slot machines. And as part of that cover story, the New York Times reporter went out to Las Vegas to the headquarters of IGT, which is the major manufacturer of slot machines in the United States. And he was going up to each employee at IGT. And these are people making well over $100,000 a year. They're math wizards, software engineers who are making all these slot machines. And he went up to each person and he asked them, do you play the slot machines that you make? And to a person, none of them gambled. But the kicker was he went up to one final slot machine maker and said, do you play the slots that you make? And the guy goes, this is what the employee said to a New York Times reporter, the leading paper in the country. He says, slots are for losers. Okay? Slots are for losers. That's the guy that makes the product. Okay, so for me, this wasn't a situation of Bank of America doing something or this is a government program. Whether it's here in Alabama or any other state, slot machines and these other forms of extreme gambling that states are promoting, it's an extension of a government program, and the people that make the product don't use it, and they consider it their customers as losers. That's the antithesis of what it means to be an American citizen. We're supposed to be kind of all in this together to provide opportunity and give people a fair shot and kind of put love back into the society. And here you have a government program which is about turning citizens into losers. So that moment for me, just reading that story, it changed the arc of my life. I ended up, a few years later, got involved in the national movement to stop predatory gambling, and I've been at this now for 15 years. And I think, in one phrase, I described this as America's most neglected major problem. And Alabama is a better state for the last 25 years because it hasn't had predatory gambling like other states have.
Now, when you come to Alabama to help in this cause, and you've been here numerous times over the years, you've spoken before our state legislature, you've led seminars and conferences and keynote spoken at many events. It's a little different here than most of the states you go to, right? It's different because we're starting from a different point than where most states are.
That's right, yeah. One thing that your listeners need to be clear on is that the legalization of commercialized gambling in this country as a public policy has failed. And it's failed miserably. And so Alabama is in a far better position today as a state because it has not embraced the gimmick of state lotteries or brick and mortar casinos and online gambling. Your citizens are have far more money in their pockets in their daily lives. Your communities are in a better place. The fabric of your local communities are a better place. There's less family dysfunction here in Alabama because you don't have all these extreme forms of predatory gambling. Your state budget is in a better place because you don't have predatory gambling. So the state, your economy here is much better because you don't have predatory gambling like other states do. So this has been a huge win for Alabama, the fact that you haven't gone down this road. And I think that's something to be very proud of.
Well, we're going to get into some of the facts and the myths of predatory gambling, and many of those are going to come out in some of what you just said. We're very much giving you an overview right now, and this is going to be a series of segments, both airing on our radio program and over our video channels as well. And so you're going to want to stay tuned and continue to look for more episodes or listen for more segments coming from this. And Alabama now one of only four states that doesn't have a state lottery. And of course, our people will try to tell us that, we're way behind the times because we don't have a lottery. But I say, well, let's just look and see how it's worked out in these other states, and let's make a decision based on what's happened. We have verifiable evidence that these things aren't quite as good as they thought, starting with New Jersey back in the late 60s, instituting the first state lottery. How's it worked out for them?
That's right. Yeah,
Not very well.
That's right.
They got higher taxes and more gambling and issues than they had before they started.
It's the big con, the whole thing. The business is a con, and the idea that this has helped states is the big con. It's been an epic public policy failure, starting from lotteries through brick and mortar casinos and now online gambling.
Well, let's talk about this word predatory, because in the name of our organization that you lead and that I'm happy to be affiliated with, Stop Predatory Gambling. I think we can all figure out stop, but talk about predatory. Why do we use that word specifically?
Sure. So there's a distinction between social forms of gambling versus predatory gambling. So social forms of gambling would be, it's a Friday night, you have some guys over from work and you have a friendly poker game, or your office has a Super Bowl office pool, or you have a March Madness bracket.
It's all informal, between friends.
You're on the golf course.
Yeah.
It's a casual thing. It's not being run as a business. There's no house involved. And so, we refer to that as social gambling. Okay, the state, people already can do that. It's already legal.
Sure.
People already can have. People have that. Can do that whatever they want to on that front. Predatory gambling is when state governments, partner with powerful corporate gambling interests to use commercialized gambling, which in commercialized gambling means it's gambling being run as a business. And when gambling is run as a business, it creates an adversarial relationship between the gambling operator and the person who's gambling. Okay, an adversarial relationship. So what that means is, like, they're trying to take you down.
Yep.
Okay, they're trying to crush you. This isn't a situation where, like, they're serving you a delicious meal and hoping you have a great experience. Like, they're trying to take all the money you have. Okay, and in the terms of the industry, it's called the play to extinction, until you play till all your money is gone. So here you have a business where there's an adversarial relationship between the operator and its customer, and the aim here is it's to exploit and defraud citizens and their communities. So that's why we call it predatory. It's being done as a business, and because there's this inherent adversarial relationship, at the end of the day, it's about exploiting and defrauding citizens and their communities. And predatory gambling, for your listeners just to be clear, it's become the public voice. It's the advertising and marketing of predatory gambling in this country is the public voice of American government to citizens in almost every state in our country today, excluding really Alabama, because you don't have it here. But in every other state, what we advertise to the American people more than anything else is constant calls to gamble. And I'm in my early 50s. I'm not that old. Like, when I was a kid growing up in the 1970s, we used to run ads with guys like John Wayne would come on camera and he'd say, "Invest in your country. Buy U.S. savings bonds." We used to encourage low-income folks, middle-income folks, to save money by, invest in your country to build bridges and roadways and, putting people to work. Like, that's how we historically in our country have helped build America. Like, we encourage people to save, and that's how our economy grew. Today, the public voice of our government is a con. we're cheating and exploiting people with a product that is trying to take you down. Like you've created, in order for government to win in this public policy, everyone else has to lose. Like so, it's in the business of creating losers, and that is So we wonder why there's so much cynicism in our country today. What government incentivizes, it shapes our national character. And the key thing I want to be clear to your listeners too: this isn't a Republican or Democratic issue. You have establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats working arm in arm to push predatory gambling in this country. It's really the only issue that both political parties can agree on. We can't agree on anything else, but we can agree on? We need more predatory gambling. We need $50 scratch-off tickets in low-income communities. We need a Las Vegas-style casino coming in through the internet in every home in America. Like that's what both the establishment of both parties represent today. And it's what we do more than anything else. It's the solution to everything. You have budget problems, bring in more gambling. You need to pay teachers, bring in gambling. You have a community that's struggling economically. Oh, you know what the answer is?
Build a casino.
It's a gimmick. It's a con. So anyway, so that's why this issue, regardless of your political stripes, reforming America, it runs through getting government out of the gambling business. And Alabama, to its credit, is so much better off today for the last 25 years because you haven't gone down this road.
Well, let's mention predatory as well. That tell me what the numbers are, or tell me what the trends are. But gambling operation targets lower income communities. Is that true?
Yeah, there's no debate. Yeah, I mean, let's just put some real numbers on this. So in the big picture nationally, in Alabama, for the most part, has been excluded from this in terms of the amount of personal wealth that's been lost. So over the next 6 years in our country, just to show, like, put some real meat on this reality of why predatory gambling is America's most neglected major problem, okay, is number one is over the next 6 years, the American people are going to lose more than $1 trillion of personal wealth to government-sanctioned gambling, okay? That equates to more than $150 billion a year of lost personal wealth to government-sanctioned gambling, okay? And if you base it down by per minute, that's more than $285,000 every minute that the American people are losing of personal wealth to government-sanctioned gambling, okay? So both parties come up with all these ideas. Oh, tax billionaires, says the left. The right stands up and says, oh, we should cut taxes to grow our economy. And like they come up with all these different ideas of how we're going to expand the middle class. What would expand the middle class more than anything else? If we just cut the amount of gambling losses suffered by the American people by 50% over the next 6 years, that's $500 billion of personal wealth you'd put back into the daily lives of the American people, most of whom are low income. There's no policy reform from either party that would come within 1,000 miles of making more of a difference in people's lives.
Well, so very well said.
Yeah. But in terms of low income people, by the fact that we advertise this so much, this is actually a key point to this, is through all this advertising, is what we've done is we've created a nation of citizens who are small earners, who could be small savers, and we've turned them into a nation of habitual bettors. Okay? And Alabama, to its credit, has been excluded from that. Yes, you have some people who gamble here, but it's on the fringe of Alabama society. In most states, gambling is everywhere. It's in laundromats. In a state like Illinois, they have laundromats. They call them wash and wins, where you go wash your laundry, and in the same building where you're washing your clothes, there's 5 slot machines there. And this is in rural Illinois. Like, this is just in the urban areas. This is everywhere. Sure. And it's all across our country today. So those are some examples of how it impacts low-income people.
Les Bernal with Stop Predatory Gambling in studio with us. He's here from the Boston area in our state, and we're very grateful. We've got continuing segments coming at you as we talk about this issue and how it applies to Alabama. This is Priority Talk Radio. Greg Davis will be right back. Greg Davis here with Priority Talk Radio. Thank you for being with us. We are having a very special edition we're talking predatory gambling and revealing the truth behind gambling operations. Les Bernal, the executive director of the national organization Stop Predatory Gambling, in studio with me. And if you're hearing this on our audio radio broadcast or our podcast, there's also video access to this as well. at our social medias, Priority Talk. So we do hope that you'll tune in for all of these very special segments. They're going to be in all of our outlets. So Les is with us. We were just talking about what predatory gambling, what that means, and just the essence of what gambling operators do. It is predatory. So much money is lost. He's given the numbers in our previous segment. And that's money that could be spent in the economy, could be saved, could be invested. That's bad for the economy, of course. And Les, really, gambling operations are different than other legitimate business operations. Tell us what the differences are, because some people may just see this as a business like any other business.
Right. So it's a critical point for all of your listeners to understand, Greg, and that is there's a false perception that gambling is just like any other business, and nothing could be further from the truth. So what separates online gambling, commercialized sports gambling, regional casinos, and state lotteries from every other business, including other vices like alcohol, marijuana, and tobacco. So even those have issues. I'm not defending those, but this is even more different than those other vices. Okay, is that in this business there's an adversarial relationship between the gambling operator and the person who's gambling. Okay, so it's a big con game. Commercialized gambling is a big con game. Citizens are conned into thinking that they can collect money in a scheme that's designed to ultimately get them fleeced. So let's put like kind of a real life analogy on this. If I go out for some barbecue, I go buy a ticket to an University of Alabama football game, I order myself a glass of sweet tea, that's what you receive in return. There's a one-for-one exchange. When you put your money down in commercialized gambling, what you receive is the lure that you might win cash. Okay, it's a financial exchange. That's the key phrase. Gambling is a financial exchange, but it's a financial exchange that's mathematically stacked against you, so that inevitably you lose your money the longer you keep doing it. Success only comes at someone else's expense. All right, so that's why like commercialized gambling. That's the reason why it's illegal here in Alabama and in every other state, except for you have to make a special bills for it, is because commercialized gambling is a form of financial fraud. Okay, it's a form of consumer financial fraud, just like price gouging and false advertising, both of which are illegal. And it's illegal for you and I to run our own gambling operation in other states, even where gambling is legal. It's only legal when you partner with the state, because it's a form of financial fraud.
Yeah,
so,
you and I can't do it.
That's right.
You have to partner with the state. They have to allow you to do it.
Yeah, and this big con has resulted in
takes the free market out of it, certainly.
Yeah, there's no free market. This is the antithesis. This is the ultimate version of crony capitalism. Okay, this crony capitalism results in life-changing financial losses for millions of Americans, and many Alabama citizens have been spared the financial suffering and the public health suffering because this hasn't been in their communities like it has been in other places in the country. So you're far better off because you haven't gone down this road. Les
Bernal, our guest, and during this segment we're sort of wanting to lay out some facts about gambling. Number one, it's a con, and I think you just said that. It's a con. I think next is that gambling, and many people don't realize this, it's a known, dangerous, destructive addiction. Gambling is addictive. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So when we say it's addictive, that's just not you and me saying that. Like the science in this country now recognizes gambling as a known, dangerous, and addictive product. So gambling is now recognized as an addiction, and as a known, dangerous, and addictive product, just on the same level as heroin, cocaine, and opioids in the American Psychiatric Association's DSM-5. So those of you who may not be familiar with what the DSM-5 represents, it's like the mental health Bible. Health insurance companies use it. Your doctor's office uses it. Hospitals and so on, like healthcare providers, they use it. It's the principal source for mental health diagnosis. They recognize gambling now as a known, dangerous, and addictive product, just like opioids, heroin, and cocaine. That's the reality of this. And so we don't push other dangerous and known dangerous and addictive products in the middle of sporting events, like we do for gambling. Like you can be watching a game on a Sunday afternoon with your kids, a football game, and in the middle of it, they're pushing these extreme forms of gambling. exposing kids and so on to these, normalizing them to this dangerous and addictive product. We don't do that for cigarettes. We don't allow opioids to market right in the middle on television in broad daylight to people. So that's what. So and you and I still can't do this unless we partner with state government. And so and the key thing to know about this is the business model for commercialized gambling. It's based on addiction. Okay, especially on the online gambling stuff. If you've watched any kind of sporting event over the last 2 years, online gambling, online sports gambling is pushed relentlessly. Almost every other advertisement is to push a sports gambling betting app. More than 86% of online gambling profits come from 5% of the gamblers. Okay, so the casual gambler is irrelevant to the business model. It's all about turning you, maybe someone who's never gambled before, into a relentless gambling addict. And the way they do that is, here's $2,000 worth of free gambling wagers if you sign up on the app.
Which it's really not free.
Right, I understand. but that's how they lure
they tell
you in.
that.
And then once you're in, there's bonus bets. Hey, you have a bet this week. Here's $100 worth of free bets. If you got to.
Well, you said the right word. They lure you in.
Yeah.
And so, we'll talk more about that going forward. Let's talk about its effect on kids. I want to get through some of these just basics before we start getting into more of the details.
Yeah.
What about how does gambling and this predatory practice affect our kids? What is the story there?
So today, across the United States, we have an epidemic of child and teen gambling in every state that has legalized online sports gambling. You have kids of all demographics now with their parents walking in to Gamblers Anonymous meetings. I always tell the story. When I was growing up as a kid, I used to collect, baseball cards, sports cards of my favorite teams and my favorite athletes. Today, you talk to any middle school or high school principal in a state where they've legalized online sports gambling and ask them, especially with the young boys in these schools, the middle school boys and high school boys are talking about at the cafeteria tables, in the school locker rooms, on the playgrounds. They're not talking about who their favorite athletes anymore. They're talking about who they're betting on, parlay bets, in-play wagers, relentless discussions on gambling. And so they're normalizing this known dangerous and addictive product for kids. So you have kids today, the kids, and anyone who has a child, just look how much they play video games today. The idea that you're going to encourage kids now who already have grown up with screens in their whole life to transition them over, to lure them into doing online gambling apps. It's a dangerous and addictive product, just like opioids and cocaine, and we're feeding them this relentlessly through the internet. And states are partnering with the industry to do this. And so you literally have this massive epidemic today. You have one of the very prominent New York problem gambling counselors said the number one demographic calling into their helpline today in the state of New York, it's not grown-ups, it's kids, it's teenagers, young adults in their early 20s who have been crushed by online sports gambling. So who are we doing this for? This is driven. This whole grassroots movement for state lotteries or casinos or online gambling. It's driven by very powerful financial interests, okay, who stand to benefit from this. They're the only people that win in this business. The rest of us, whether you gamble or not, you pay even if you don't play.
Wow, very good. Let's talk about, and I love that, you pay even if you don't play. That's a fact as well, isn't it?
Sure is. And so for all you non-gamblers out there sitting there, say you kind of know this is a bad idea for your community and your family, be like, well, it's not really going to affect me. Maybe I'll get some tax relief. Just pause for a second and look at the states that are the biggest predatory gambling states in this country. New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, California, Connecticut, and so on. All of these states, okay, are also your states in the worst financial condition. Okay, they promise, hey, here in Pennsylvania, we're gonna reduce your property taxes if you legalize casinos. It's part of the big con. The business itself is a con. The idea that somehow you get any tax relief from this, it's a big con. Predatory gambling is the ultimate budget gimmick, and you, the taxpayer, over the long term, you end up paying higher taxes for less services because of this gimmick that comes into your state. Because who do you think pays when you have, that money I mentioned earlier? When $1 trillion of personal wealth is being lost by the American people, over the next 6 years.
Who makes up the difference?
Who do you think pays for their hospital care? Who do you think pays for their housing? Who do you think pays for their food? Who do you think pays for the criminal justice system because they commit crimes to feed their addiction? You, the non-gambler, pays for all this. Okay, and the other way you pay for it, aside from higher taxes, is you also experience a lower standard of living, because when you have all that money being lost on commercialized gambling as a business, it's a sterile transfer of wealth, right? So if I go buy a new car, I spend money at a local restaurant, and so on. There's an economic multiplier effect by that. Predatory gambling, the impact of it is the equivalent of taking out a $100 bill from your wallet, throwing it into the street, and then going out and paying somebody to pick it up, paying the minimum wage to pick it up. It's just a sterile transfer of wealth from millions of people's pockets into the hands of a very few rich people.
Wow. And one more fact I want to hit on is that really the little guy is exploited as well.
Yeah. So predatory gambling exploits the little guy. Okay,
I had to get a drink.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. So we talk about the real money being lost here. That the American people are losing more than $250,000 a minute to this. So we've a nation of citizens who are small earners, who could be small savers, and we've turned them into a nation of habitual bettors. So to put real numbers on, state of Georgia, okay, because here in Alabama, oh look, Georgia's got a lottery. Other states have a lottery around us. Georgia,
all states around us do.
Yeah. So Georgia has a $50 scratch-off ticket. Okay, a $50 scratch-off ticket they're selling in low-income communities where citizens make $7.25 an hour as a minimum wage. Okay, that's the same minimum wage here in Alabama. Okay, you got to work a full day's labor in Georgia. Okay, at a minimum wage job, washing dishes, whatever,
one scratch off,
before you can lose it. Your whole day's whole day's wage. Okay, in 5 seconds on a $50 scratch off ticket, pushed to you relentlessly by your own state government. Okay, we talk about, that's the American dream perverted. So if you're somebody who believes making America better, it runs through changing the voice of American government today, which is in every state in this country, the dominant voice of American government is to push more and more extreme forms of gambling. It's what we advertise to the American people more than anything else.
Les Bernal with Stop Predatory Gambling in studio with us. This is a series of video, audio, radio, and podcast segments that we're bringing to you, very special. And we've just been trying to get some of the basic facts out. And as we move forward in this, this is the second of what's going to be numerous segments. We're going to begin to move into some myths going forward about casinos. We've given an overview, we've given some facts, and now we want to dive into some myths, which will get much more specific. Lots of the information that Les talks about, in fact, almost all of it, he's documented it on the website, stoppredatorygambling.org. In particular, I would go under the frequently asked questions, and much of what you'll hear him say here today is documented there. And so if you hear something and you're like, what was that? Where did that come from? Go finding it, stoppredatorygambling.org. All right, stay with us. Continue to listen. Find the next segment if you're watching these videos. And stay with us right here. It's Priority Talk Radio with Greg Davis. Welcome back in. It is Priority Talk Radio and Podcast. Greg Davis here with you. And we continue in a very special series of segments visiting with Les Bernal. He is the executive director of the national organization Stop Predatory Gambling. He's been in our state, and he has sat down with me in studio to cover what really are a lot of the facts and the myths of gambling. And of course, here in Alabama, at the time of these recordings, we are just getting ready to head into a 2024 legislative session where, for various motives and reasons, the gambling industry, along with legislators, are making a move. Many are making a move to take Alabama from probably the state in the country with the least amount of gambling, or at least right at the least, to just get up on par with many other states that have been doing illegal gambling for years, or been doing gambling for years and years and years. And part of the ruse of that is that because there is illegal gambling going on in the state, that maybe it's time we regulate it and tax it and control it and all this kind of stuff. Les, you've heard that argument before in other states as you work all over the country. This isn't the first time this play has been come out of the playbook, is it?
Yeah, because what your listeners need to understand is no inherent grassroots movement for commercialized gambling, whether it's for lotteries, brick and mortar, casinos, or online gambling. So what the lobbyists need to do is create this artificial narrative, this phony narrative that somehow is happening everywhere, and so we might as well just do it because there's no grassroots movement for it. So here's what the reality is: this. There's no evidence from any jurisdiction over the last 50 years in America that illegal gambling goes down with the introduction of legalized gambling. And it makes sense why that's the case, right? This idea that somehow by normalizing commercialized gambling, what you're doing is you encourage more and more people to participate in it. So, historically, you'd have cops go break up the rings of there were illegal gambling machines or there was illegal bookmaking. The cops would go in and break it up. Now, in many states where they've had, where commercialized gambling's been entrenched, promoted by the state for a long time, local law enforcement now sees it as a revenue issue. It's not a issue of the law anymore. Like, if you're an illegal operator, like, you love the introduction of legalized gambling because you bring in these machines. You don't have to pay taxes to the state. You can give people better odds. You can lend money. Like, so in all these states, like New Jersey and elsewhere, they keep saying, legalizing this is going to wipe it out. It's just a phony narrative. And I think just to put the exclamation point on that, a year ago at this time, the New York Times did a front page series around the rollout of online gambling in this country, how it happened. It was the Sunday before Thanksgiving of 2022. And in that series, they just they unmasked the phony lobbying campaign that was led by the National Lobbying Association for the Gambling Industry, which is known as the American Gambling Association, and known as the AGA. The AGA created this whole phony narrative for illegal gambling to create this fake momentum, right, that we needed, that this is somehow going to wipe it out. Well, guess what one of the top priorities are today for the AGA? Oh, we need the Department of Justice to crack down on all this illegal gambling happening. Well, you know what? You've been claiming that legalizing all these forms of gambling was going to reduce illegal gambling. Why would we have this raging problem of illegal gambling in our country today if legalized gambling wiped it out? So that's another reason why the public policy of legalized gambling has been an epic policy failure. Like, you don't have the Alabama, state police lobbying for to legalize gambling here. They're not the one. You don't have the FBI testifying before the legislature saying, "Hey, you know what the solution is to?" Like, it's nonsense. It's the only people saying this narrative is the gambling industry itself, the gambling industry lobbyists, and the legislators who carry the water for them in the legislature. The same cookie cutter campaign that you're seeing here in Alabama, like, this has happened in every state. It's the same phony narrative. It's recycled in state after state. So it's just a ruse because there's no, it's part of the con that somehow illegal gambling is going to be wiped out. It's already legal for Alabamans to place a bet with each other in this, and say we can already do that. What's illegal is I can't run my own casino, I can't run my own lottery, and I can't run my own online sports book, and that's because it's a con. It's a form of financial fraud. Okay, that's why it's illegal. I can't run it, but if individually, I can do it separately.
But if the government wants to run it, then with
their
partners, then they allow themselves to do it.
And the reason why it's prohibited, and the reason why you have your constitutional amendment on it, is because it's a con. It's a business that's based on exploiting your neighbor.
Well, going forward in this discussion, we're going to sort of frame around myths regarding gambling, and I guess we could almost say, myth number one is that legalizing gambling doesn't reduce the amount of gambling in any state.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a myth.
And
look, and I hear that argument often. If we just can do what we want to do coming up this spring, then we will have less gambling in the state than we do now. I've heard that, but it's not true. People who break the law continue to break the law. They just do it in different ways. You just create a whole new game for them to play. And so the illegal gambling still happens.
Yeah. So here's how I'd frame it for your listeners, just to make it sink home. When you have state governments, partner with the gambling industry, of which Alabama thus far has not done. But if they do, this is what it's like. It's like putting Dracula in charge of the blood bank, right? So Georgia, which is your neighboring state, they have $50 scratch-off tickets in low-income communities where citizens make $7.25 an hour. Georgia's selling online lottery tickets, okay, right on their website, when they have cartoon-like figures, okay, with like ladybugs and cats and dogs. Like, who do you think these cartoon-like graphics are geared to? A senior citizen? They're geared to kids, to normalize gambling. So this idea that somehow bringing this in is going to protect citizens, it's a lie. Like, just look at how states, and I put this in quotes, look at how states regulate gambling now. They're exempt from truth in advertising regulations under the Federal Trade Commission. No state attorney general in the United States has ever brought consumer protection litigation against a gambling operator. Okay, and the reason for that is because states are a partner to it. It'd be like suing itself. So anything goes. That's why right now you have people making when it comes to online gambling, you have citizens making more than 100 bets a day. Okay, 100 bets a day on a government program. Like, they're feeding on addiction. 86% of the online gambling profits come from 5% of the players. For lottery games, 70 to 80% of lottery profits come from 10% of the people who play the lottery. And that's why states go from, $1 a ticket, and now they're pushing $50 scratch-off tickets. States are pushing, they have something called Keno in states where they have 2,000 games a week, every 4 minutes, from like 5 a.m. to 2 a.m. Okay, like, who are we doing this for? Okay, that's right. This has been an epic policy failure. Gambling is the public voice of government today. It's part of the center of American life.
Well, let's mention states who set up a commission to oversee legalized gambling and to stop illegal gambling in a state, because that's really what we're hearing a lot of. We have recently just set up a medical marijuana commission here. And for anybody that keeps up with the news, you know that has been an absolute disaster, okay, because of all the lawsuits and the greed going along with that industry. And gambling, even, I would say, even more so, potentially. How do these gambling commissions, what's been your experience with those around the country?
Yeah, again, I go back to the phrase I just said a couple minutes ago. When state governments partner with the gambling industry, it's the equivalent of putting Dracula in charge of the blood bank. So the role of these gambling commissions is a lot of fanfare. Say, we're going to do consumer protections, and I put that in quotes. Again, they're not protecting you, the citizen. The way the states make money from this is they need you to lose as much money as possible. So that's why they're selling $50 scratch-off tickets. Texas sells $100 scratch-off tickets. Right. Casinos are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only thing that was open during all the controversy around COVID in America when state government shut down, the one government program that kept running during that whole time, and they had record sales in April of 2020. Guess what it was? It was state lotteries. Yep. Okay, Georgia, Texas, all these other states, they had record lottery sales because people received their stimulus checks from the government, and they're financially desperate. They played in the lottery. They don't. Why were lotteries running in that window? Like, where's the public benefit of that? They were just doing to exploit citizens as much as possible. Well, so gambling commissions are there to aid and abet the industry. They don't represent the citizen. They're there to foster. They represent the voice of the gambling industry.
And I would imagine from an enforcement standpoint, especially for enforcement of illegal gambling, regulation's one thing. Regulation is controlling what's legal. Enforcement is what you do when something's illegal. Illegal gambling will continue to happen even if there's a commission. And I would imagine it probably wouldn't be uncommon for these commissions to become corrupt and be bought off to ignore illegal gambling operations that will continue to happen underneath the radar.
Again,
they're corrupt.
Yeah, the whole system is a con. Okay, the whole. Again, whether it's they don't regulate to protect the citizen. They only regulate to make sure the state gets its fair cut. And so that's why the business practices that are allowed for commercialized gambling operators are business practices that no other business can get away with. If I'm in a local insurance broker, I can't give you a bottle of vodka and get you drunk and have you sign insurance policy papers.
But they can do it in the casino.
Casinos, it's anything goes.
They'll give you the alcohol.
It's part of it's part of the business.
Yeah. All right. Les Bernal is with us with StopPredatoryGambling.org. This is a series of segments, so continue listening, radio, podcast, or video. And we'll be right back. And with this next segment, we're going to talk about these video lottery terminals, or better known around here as electronic bingo machines, which are illegal. But let's talk about these. Are they safe? Are they harmless, as a lot of people seem to think they are? We'll talk about that and the effect of gambling on people's personal wealth. All right, it's Priority Talk Radio. Greg Davis here. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us for another segment of Priority Talk Radio. Greg Davis with you. And we're doing a very special series of segments concerning predatory gambling across the nation, and also how it could affect Alabama and is affecting Alabama. And Les Bernal is with us. He is the National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling. And I tell you, it is the go-to website if you want to understand the gambling issue in the country. It is stoppredatorygambling.org. And so we, in past segments, both by audio and video, we have covered a litany of issues. We've got many more ahead of us. We're just trying to break this down in bite-sized chunks for listeners and viewers, so that you can begin to understand how the gambling industry is predatory, and how the government shouldn't be partnering with corporate business interests to prey upon its own people. One way this happens, Les, is through these video lottery terminals. I guess is more the official name of them. The video poker machines, the video bingo machines. You know, they pick up all kinds of different names to try to nuance so they can somehow try to find themselves to be legal. Now in Alabama, slot machines are illegal. Even on the Porch Creek Indian, the 3 casinos, they're illegal. They can't use those. And they're illegal across the board in the state of Alabama. Any of these video bingo machines. A lot of people would say, hey, what's the problem with these machines? What's the big deal? Whether it's a slot machine or a video machine, they're kind of the same. I'll let you explain that. But they may say, what's the part of it's fun, it's entertainment, it's like playing a video game or something to that effect. Talk to us about these machines.
Yeah, so one of the key facts that your listeners need to understand about these so-called video lottery terminals or electronic bingo machines is, again, it goes kind of back to the running theme throughout this discussion, is that predatory gambling at its core is a form of financial fraud. It's a big con. And part of the con is the language that gambling operators use to circumvent state laws to try to put in these extreme forms of gambling. So a video lottery terminal is essentially, from you as a user experience, is like very similar to playing a slot machine. Technically, the math inside the machine, how it pays out, is what makes it a so-called lottery machine. Instead of playing against the house, you're playing against, in theory, like a lottery game is when you play against other people. So in theory, you're going against other people. But you, as a user experience, it's very much like playing a slot machine.
You push a button, things move on the screen.
But the experience of it, there's multiple lines. So the experience is very much like a slot machine. So it's a way that these gambling operators come in and try to circumvent state laws, to profit.
Here they'll call them bingo because they can print out a card of your winnings rather than just dropping money out. And then you have to take the card and turn it in and claim your prize like you would with bingo. Yeah. But our Supreme Court has ruled over and over and over again that these machines are illegal based on Alabama's Constitution. So they are illegal.
Yeah. So, and they're slot machines. It's just another electronic gambling machines. Before online gambling came on the scene, electronic gambling machines are the most dangerous and addictive form of gambling. Between 40 to 60% of electronic gambling machine profits come from citizens who become addicted to the gambling machines. So just like we talk about online gambling, the business model is 86% of the profits come from 5% of the gamblers. With electronic gambling machines, it's not as extreme, but almost as extreme, where the business model is still based on the addicted player. Because this is, again, a known, dangerous, and addictive product. And that's why you and I can't run our own casino. The state can only operate with the blessing of the state because it's a form of fraud and because it's such a dangerously addictive product.
Well, now I will say we could run one in our state. We could set up a place and run them, Les, but we would have to pay off people in order to do it.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's important. There's no grassroots
because people are running them, but it's corrupt.
Yeah. And I think people need to understand. So we call this phenomenon the Hypocrite Hall of Fame. And the Hypocrite Hall of Fame has a lot of future inductees coming out of Alabama as well. So what the Hypocrite Hall of Fame is it's on our. If you go to our website, we have a whole post where we talk about all of we've identified quotes from all these major casino executives, billionaires, many of them, slot machine makers, governors, state legislators, mayors, who stand up and they say, let's bring in casinos. I'm going to bring this. This is great for your community. This is great with great revenue source. But then they privately acknowledge, hey, you know what? But I'm not a gambler myself. The idea that this is the commercialized gambling, predatory gambling, is the only product or service in America where the people that own it and promote it, they don't use it. So the restaurant chef, he eats the local barbecue guy, Jim and Nick's right at Birmingham, like that guy eats his food that he cooks. Like Julia Roberts, she watches the movies she makes. Nick Saban watches football games. This is the only product or service where the people that own it and promote it don't use it. So most of these legislators who are pushing gambling here in the state, governors, the statewide officials who are endorsing this, they don't gamble. So there's an incredible hypocrisy here. They have retirement funds, they have investments, they own a home, they have an emergency fund for a crisis. Half the country, including here in Alabama, they don't have any assets whatsoever. They literally live week to week, paycheck to paycheck. And these are the extreme forms of gambling that we're pushing on people.
The way they can have that security is to go out and try to win in these gambling operations. That's the way they think they can get it.
That's right, yeah.
So they have no other hope or no other way.
Yeah. So and the state markets these gambling games as this is your best. And they will literally print this right on the scratch ticket, or the advertising for the billboard will say, here's where the winners play. Even though it's designed to get you to lose, but they'll market these scratch tickets. For example, they'll say your fastest way to $1 million. Anybody who's successful in life, most of your listeners, likely middle income folks, or over the years, the way you build financial security in this country, it's the Dave Ramsey approach, right? It's getting out of debt, slowly saving money week after week over the course of a lifetime. That's how you achieve financial security. That's the American way. And so predatory gambling, it shrinks the middle class. So anyways, so it's time that if you're a legislator and you're endorsing this, or you're a governor and you're endorsing this, if it's not good enough for you to use, why are you encouraging the people of your state to do this when you know it's a con? That's why this whole thing it's a ripoff.
Well, Les, I have absolutely heard that. Now I don't ever gamble. I don't ever use those machines. This is from legislators and people. I don't do that. But if the people of Alabama want to vote so they can do it, that's fine with me. You know what I mean? And it is hypocritical. Yeah. Something is that bad. I've had them tell me, I'll vote for it in the legislature, but when it goes to a statewide ballot, then I'll vote against it. Yeah. And I'm like, you're going to swap one of 35 votes to be one of 3 million? Yeah. What sense does that make? Yeah. You were put in a position to do what was right and best for the citizens of our state.
Again, that's another part of the hypocrisy by many of our public officials who of both parties, Republican establishment and Democratic establishment, who are pushing this. So when they talk about, some legislators will try to have it both ways. They'll say, well, personally, I don't like this, but I'm going to vote for it, so let it go to the ballot. And I always say to these legislators, if you were in a primary or in a general election and you were outspent 3-1 in your campaign, no matter your merit, there's a very good chance you might lose that election. Okay. Now imagine going on the ballot and being outspent 1,000-1 or 10,000-1. In the idea that somehow democracy is going to work, because that's what's happening. You put this to the ballot. The gambling interests who are spending millions of dollars already here in Alabama, virtually every lobbying firm in the state of Alabama has a gambling client now. Okay, so this is it's the biggest lobbyist employer in the state, in every state is the gambling industry, and that somehow you put this on the ballot, somehow you're gonna have a real debate, an informed debate on this. They're gonna outspend people 1,000-1.
Yeah, to get their message out.
So that's part of the lie.
Because it's an investment for them, because they stand to gain from it on the other side.
Yeah, that's right, because there's no grassroots movement for predatory gambling. Citizens aren't pounding the table saying, I want $50 scratch-off tickets in my local convenience store or gas station. Yeah. I want electronic gambling machines in my local laundromat, which is the truth in other states.
So let's back to these machines, these video, before we wrap this segment up, these video bingo machines, as they're often referred to in Alabama. They're highly addictive. They're set up to be that way. There's a psychological element to these that creates a chemical reaction in people that like addicts them to these machines.
It's like the science tells us. The American Psychiatric Association has defined gambling as addictive as opioids, cocaine, and heroin. These playing these machines is that experience. That's the kind of high that you get. But in addition to the public health danger it is, they're also designed to get you to lose, like over and over again financially. Okay, like so these are machines. Like the exact language. This is right from Natasha Shull, who was on 60 Minutes, which did a major segment on electronic gambling machines that was called Addiction by Design, and they identified this. The exact quote from the industry is, they're designed to get you to play to extinction until all your money is gone. Right? That's from the lips of a gambling industry executive, that they're play to extinction. So why would state government officials encourage people to play a game where, as I said to kick off this whole interview, that where the people that make the machines consider the people that use slot machines as losers? Okay? All right. You know, the idea that public officials would bring this product in when they themselves don't gamble, it's the height of hypocrisy, and it's what's broken about American government today. This has nothing to do about gambling. This has everything to do about the role of government in America today and what you want out of America. It's not, we get so caught up on candidates who run for office. This is the defining issue in America today. This is America's most neglected major problem. You want to change the direction of Alabama and change the direction of your country? It runs through getting government back into the side of the American people and taking them out of the ripoff game, which is predatory gambling. Les
Bernal is our guest with Stop Predatory Gambling. Do look at the website. Much of what he is saying, it's documented there on the website. We give it away. It's on the website, stoppredatorygambling.org. All of this information that we'll talk about, you can find it in one form or another there. All right, this is a series of segments as we talk about commercialized gambling, and in the state of Alabama, we know that there's a big push for that currently, and so we want you to be well informed with both sides, all sides of this issue. So let's take a break and come back with another segment with Les Bernal as we continue to talk about gambling. We're exposing some of the myths of gambling right here on Priority Talk. Welcome back in. This is Priority Talk Radio. Greg Davis with you for this radio program, audio podcast, and video podcast. You can find this in all formats. We are doing a very special sit-down with Les Bernal, who is the National Director for Stop Predatory Gambling, revealing the truth behind gambling operations. And we have spent, we've been talking now for about an hour or so about this issue, and in a broad way, but also trying to alert and educate us how these issues can and will affect Alabama. And so Les is an expert on these issues as much as anyone can ever be, I think, on our side of these issues, exposing the predatory nature of gambling. And so if we're trying to take these kind of subject by subject, topic by topic, so go back and find the past conversations, these past segments, to get full up to speed. But as we begin this conversation, let's talk about casinos. We just got through talking about the video bingo machines and slot machines, and oftentimes, of course, we will see those in a state that's legalized gambling and legalized casinos. We'll see those machines in casinos. So talk to us about casinos. Everybody acts like these are just wonderful tourist destinations and brings in all this out-of-state money, and it's all just wonderful and great. In Alabama, we have 3 legal casinos. They are on Porch Creek. Indians run those. Those are federal issues. Not much we can do about them. They can't use slot machines or do table games. It's kind of a neutered casino, but it certainly has the casino atmosphere. Mm-hmm. They're not hardcore casinos, I would say. But if we were to legalize casinos in the state and say, were we to add 5, 6, 7, 8 more casinos across the state of Alabama, what would that look like? What would happen? What happens in other states?
Sure. So it's important to understand, like, we don't need to speculate what casinos will look like in Alabama, because have dozens of states now in this country that have embraced this failed public policy. Like the experiment with casinos has failed, okay? And that's why there's no grassroots movement for casinos here in Georgia. In Alabama, it's being driven by these powerful financial interests. And I mentioned Georgia because at the same time, Georgia's also being lobbied for casinos. So, it's all being driven by the industry.
So there's no community, there's no county that's really just out there saying, please build us a casino here in our county.
Yeah,
that's what you mean by grassroots.
Yeah, I mean, not you might have county officials. I'm talking about citizens.
Right.
Yeah, county officials, they want the money. So any public officials, it's driven by greed. So
but the people that live in a county, a casino is seen as like a dump or a landfill.
That's right. That's right.
If you're going to have one, don't build it near me.
Yeah, or like nuclear waste.
But it's thought of in the same way of, hey, if you're going to have one, I don't want it near my house.
Yeah. But one kind of story I love to tell is in a state like New Jersey, which has bet as big on casinos as any state in this country, and they also it's a huge predatory gambling state. So in a state like New Jersey, this is just a recent poll by Quinnipiac University, okay, has said 62% of citizens said casino gambling has not been good for the state. Okay, that's almost a supermajority.
62%.
62%. Okay, and that they legalized casinos in New Jersey in 1976. So this isn't like some fly. This is like after a long history now.
A generation.
A generation of people that they have concluded that they have not been good for the state. Okay, and the same poll also highlighted that 60% also believe gambling hasn't been beneficial for Atlantic City. So the whole logic behind bringing casinos in, well, we want the money. It's going to rebuild Atlantic City, right? So over the last 40 years, billions and billions of dollars have been lost in Atlantic City. All right, yet more than 2 to 1 in New Jersey, people say it's not been the magic bullet was promised. Okay, today the poverty rate in Atlantic City is higher 40 years later after bringing in casinos. How is that possible, Greg? How is it possible with billions of dollars being lost in that community that somehow the poverty rate in Atlantic City is higher? And the reason why that's the case is, which underscores this whole narrative we've been talking about for the last hour, is that this whole public policy has failed. It's a big con. The economic impact of a casino is the equivalent of taking out a $100 bill out of your wallet, throwing it into the street, and paying somebody a minimum wage to pick it up. It's a sterile transfer of wealth from millions of people's pockets into the handful of a very wealthy few. And that's why these billionaires lobby relentlessly for it here in Alabama and elsewhere for these extreme forms of gambling. Okay? This is not something that benefits the public. All right, so people don't understand that. So that's the heart of this.
Besides people losing their money, what other negative factors come along with casinos? I mean, obviously, people go there, they lose their money. Even if they win, they've already lost more than they ever win. You lose in the long run, certainly.
Yeah. So casinos, just like we talk about Atlantic City. So one major thing is it again creates more poverty. Casinos create poverty. Mm-hmm. They increase taxes for the rest of the people who don't gamble, because who do you think pays for all the social services for all the money that people lose? It increases divorce rates because one of the spouse will go out and lose the family paycheck or the family savings or the kid's college retirement fund. So creates divorce, which ultimately leads to far more family dysfunction in society. Leads to an incredible amount of addiction. Like there's no question that the closer you live to a casino, the addiction rates go up, right? Because before, like maybe you travel to a casino. If you say you're a gambler, but you go to a casino once or twice a year. Now, instead of going once or twice a year, the business model for regional casinos is people coming to a casino 5 to 6 times a week.
That's so funny that you say that, because I just had a legislator tell me that same thing. I won't name them because I try to keep those conversations private. He said he has a friend. They're in South Alabama. He has a friend. He gambles, and he says gambles big when he goes on vacation, but only when he goes on vacation. He goes to casinos. But his friend had told him, if there was a casino nearby, I would be there all the time.
Right.
He knows that he would be.
Yeah, you go after work instead of going in the gym. Like people maybe grab a cup of coffee in the morning. Like those are habits that usually are healthy for people. Here's an example where like you bring a local casino. You have a tough day at work. You have a fight with your wife. You just lost your spouse. Whatever it may be. you go to the casino, they treat you like a king or queen, as long as you're losing money. Like you start going there every day after work, or you skip work and just keep going to the casino. Stay up all night, and you stay
we
there.
have common friends who have lived that life.
Yeah,
you tell that from knowing people that's happened to them.
Yeah, but this is the casino executives openly acknowledge that their business model for these regional casinos, it's people coming 5 to 6 times a week.
Yeah, and they
like,
pray you
those
in.
Are the VIPs.
Tell me how that, because they have concierge services. They'll call you at work.
Yeah. Well, the
hey,
term,
are you coming tonight?
Just
hey,
like,
I'll have dinner for you. I'll have a girl here for you.
It's very similar to the word. Most of your listeners know what the word parasite means. It's a parasite. So the formal term that the casino uses is a host. They assign a host to you. Yeah. Okay. And what they do is they call you. Hey, Greg, we haven't seen you this week. Come on down. I'll give you $50 worth of free slots play.
Yep.
Or I'll give you down $50 worth of free dinner, because they know they track your play, because you play with a consumer card in the machine, so they know how fast you play the machines, or how much you wager at 21 on a regular basis, how long you'll play for an evening or during the day. They know what your price point is, how much you wager on each spin or each hand, and so they will encourage you to keep, because they know for every half an hour, every hour you sit in front of a slot machine or at a blackjack table or a craps table, they know how much you'll lose. And so the goal is to keep you coming back. Again, the theme of play to extinction. The whole marketing thing is, how do I get this person to play until all their money is gone?
What about prostitution, human trafficking?
All that. Casinos and money laundering go hand in hand. So if you're in a business it has some kind of illegal aspect to it, drug running, immigrant trafficking, human sex trafficking, they love the introduction of casinos, because you have all this cash that you need to launder. So money laundering in casinos, they're married at the hip. You go into a casino, the casino doesn't have to report more than 10 grand of winnings. They don't have to identify you unless you have more than 10 grand. So I go in with 9 grand of cash, I push it through the slot machines, and then I get a ticket that says I have $8,900 of winnings. I go to the cash out window, and now I get to pay taxes on that. So yes, I'm paying taxes on it, but now I've washed all that money. I can report it as gambling winnings.
Yep.
And so I can put that into real estate, any other stock market, any other business that I want to do. You know, and so that's what people need to understand. And speaking of the stock market, I think it's a critical point for many of your people to understand, including legislators, because there's a lot of pretenders of knowledge who say, "Well, the stock market's gambling, Greg."
No.
The stock market and gambling, commercialized gambling, are 180 degrees different. If you take $1,000 and you put it into a Standard & Poor's 500 index fund and you leave it there over 20 years, that money is going to grow exponentially over the course of that 20 years. You're going to have a lot more money left over. You're building wealth slowly. That's called investing. Go take that $1,000 and go buy $1,000 worth of $50 scratch-off tickets, or put $1,000 into slot machines. Instead of making you money over the long term, it's a mathematical certainty that over the long term you're going to lose every last dollar of that. So it couldn't be, so that's speculation. So people who do day trading or gamble on, do derivatives trading, like a form of that's speculation. That's a form of gambling. But investing in a stock, I own a piece of a company.
Yeah.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, other people can win along with you in the stock market.
That's right.
Other people have to lose for you to win.
That's right.
In
Well
gambling.
said. Well
All right.
said.
Before we get away from this, let's talk about a lot of people will leave Alabama and go to other states like Mississippi to go to their casinos. How much money is really lost from one state to the other? I mean, can Alabama expect this big gain of money because now we'll have our own casinos?
Yeah. So as I said at the beginning of this conversation, the state of Alabama today, the citizens here are far better off financially. Their families are better from a public health standpoint and from a family dynamic standpoint. And the state's coffers themselves are all in a better place because you haven't had a lottery in casinos these last 25 years. And so the argument that somehow people are going out of state and you're losing money, this is the reality. We call that the they're going out of state narrative. It's a phony, recycled public relations strategy that national gambling interests have used in every single state in America to breathe artificial life into efforts to legalize casinos. So what's really happening is it's like you're losing $1 to save a penny. Right? So the idea that you're going to legalize casinos in Alabama or legalize a lottery in Alabama because you're losing some money, in theory, losing some money to Georgia and these other states, it's the equivalent of losing $1 to save a penny. The idea that somehow no one's going to Georgia 5 to 6 times a week to buy lottery tickets. No one's going to Mississippi 5 to 6 times a week to play casinos. Okay, you do that. You bring those things into those forms of predatory gambling into Alabama. Now people are doing that stuff every day. You've created a whole statewide network now of citizens who are habitual gamblers, citizens who were once small earners who are small savers. Now they're habitual gamblers, all as a government program if you do it. And it's a government program where the evidence is overwhelming that it's been an epic policy failure in every other state.
We are visiting with Les Bernal on this very special edition of Priority Talk, a series of segments talking about gambling in America and how it relates to Alabama. He is the national director of Stop Predatory Gambling, revealing the truth behind gambling operations. And we will continue this conversation in our next segment. We do hope you'll join us. As we visit with Les Bernal, he is the national director of Stop Predatory Gambling, and we are revealing the truth behind gambling operations. And this is a series of segments for our radio, podcast, and video. So we hope you'll connect with us on all of those levels, and these are going to be made widely available because we know you may have jumped into this discussion at any point, and we encourage you to hit our podcast page, and you'll be able to find these eventually at our Facebook page as well as we put these up for people to see and to share. We have covered a wide range of topics concerning gambling. We do know there is a heavy push to legalize gambling in Alabama. Not only casinos that we just kind of got through talking about, were the kind of the farce of casinos being this great thing for a state, but we also want to touch on lottery and sports betting as well. So let's talk about lotteries. Les Bernal, our guest. Les, lotteries, they're just a wonderful thing that absolutely changes your state for the better. And, people win big, and it's all wonderful, and it all works out perfect, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, one of the key things, as you know, that is the message that you hear from lottery executives and lottery lobbyists.
And it funds all kinds of great things.
Yeah. But, again, if you look at the states, kind of reiterating all the arguments that, the lottery is kind of the bedrock of predatory gambling in America. It's the foundation of all of it.
It's the base of it.
Yeah, it really is. So today, in online lotteries today are really operating like online casinos. So your neighboring state of Georgia, which you hear a lot about here, okay, just to summarize their lottery a little bit, they sell $50 scratch-off tickets to citizens making $7.25 an hour. The profits that come in from the Georgia lottery in theory goes to pay this Hope Scholarship program, which ends up in large proportion, those scholarships end up going to middle class and upper class families.
Sure.
So you have low income people in a state like Georgia paying for middle class and upper class families to go to college. It's the American dream perverted
in reverse.
Yeah, it's perverted. And forget the moral. Just as a person of faith or the moral aspect to this, we're supposed to love our neighbor. Like God loves us. Like the idea that we're openly cheating and exploiting our neighbor to keep them in poverty so our kid goes to college, it's outrageous.
Yeah.
The idea that you don't know these people. If someone paid for my kid to go to college, I'd at least want to know their name. Send them a thank you note, right? But anyway, but Georgia now, more specifically, Georgia, states like Georgia and many other states, they're actively targeting young people now because they're trying to hook a whole new generation of young people, our kids, teenagers, kids, young adults, onto the lottery, and the way they're doing that is coming online. So if you were to go on,
I want to mention that because people think in Alabama they think of a lottery as going to the convenience store and buying a ticket, like you said. That's what they think of because
they
that's
think
what
of Powerball
they do.
and Mega Millions.
Because that's what they do when they cross the state line and they pick one
they
up.
Think it's Powerball, Mega Millions, and Powerball.
What you need to do is get online and go look at some of these states that have a lottery and find out. That's really not what it's all about anymore.
It's never been about those games. They make the Powerball and Mega Millions are a small portion of profits for state lotteries. More than 70 to 80% of state lottery profits come from scratch-off tickets, and that's why states like Georgia and many others sell $50 scratch-off tickets. In a state where people make $7.25 an hour, Texas sells a $100 scratch-off ticket to low-income communities.
So how much of the profits come from these scratch-offs? 70 to 80%?
About 70%. And some
so the
states,
scratch-offs are where the big money is.
And some states allow what's called electronic gambling machines. They have video gambling machines as part of the lottery.
Yeah, like in Georgia, they have those.
Yeah. But and those are games those are also very profitable. And any rapid play, high speed gambling games, that's where the money is.
Yeah.
So but the future for lotteries is online. So if you sign on to onto the Georgia lottery website and look at what a lottery looks like today in 2024, it's about online games. So they have games on there with cartoon like figures, ladybugs, cats and dogs, like. As cartoons, like who do you think those images are targeted? Like now, 30 years ago, there was a national scandal how tobacco companies were using cartoon-like figures like Joe Camel to target teenagers to get them hooked on a dangerous addictive product of smoking and tobacco. Today, you have our own state governments are partnering with gambling interests in states like Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and others, surrounding Tennessee, to encourage kids with cartoon-like games. To get them hooked on gambling. My own state of Massachusetts has, during the holiday season, they have Frosty the Snowman on a scratch-off ticket. Like an iconic figure from the holiday season, they put him on a scratch-off ticket. Like, it's unreal. State lotteries are exempt from truth and advertising regulations, so they can get away with anything. They market as this is your fastest way to $1 million.
Well, we've looked a lot here at Georgia and Virginia. Their lottery is the same way online. It's a lot of games. I'm talking it's hundreds and hundreds of games where you can go in as little as a nickel, bet a nickel. And the promise is you can win $15,000 if you bet as little as a nickel. And then they're games like Monopoly and just games that people would play on their phones or on their mobile device, but you go in now you're putting money on those games. So kids are conditioned to play those games because we put a screen in front of them from the moment they come out of the womb, basically.
That's right. And
then now all of a sudden, hey, I can win money doing this. So you put a nickel down.
That's right. Yeah,
I've always loved this quote, 1969. This is on your stoppredatorygambling.org. A New Jersey Congressman, Cornelius Gallagher. This was his selling point.
Yeah.
There were no state lotteries in the nation, 1969. New Jersey wanted to be first. And this was his quote, that if the Garden State of New Jersey enacted a lottery, quote, we could abandon all taxation in New Jersey and increase every service in our state 4 times over.
Yeah.
Didn't work out because now they not only have a state lottery, they've got casinos and online casino gambling and other sports betting. And they were listed not too long ago by George Mason University as the 48th ranking worst physical condition of any state in the nation. And they're the ones who started this whole thing.
Yeah. So here's the truth, the real truth. So that's part of the lie, right? Like that lie. Like think New Jersey is a mess.
It was going to fix everything.
Yeah. And so that's why the state of Alabama today, you have lower taxes today. Because you don't have a lottery or casinos or the other form of gambling. You have stronger families because you don't have all those other forms of gambling. Your state is better financially, in a better financial position because you haven't had predatory gambling. You have less people in poverty because you haven't had predatory gambling these last 30 years. You have less gambling addiction in your state, because you haven't been gone down the road of predatory gambling. Like Alabama today is far better off because you haven't gone down that road. So that quote is $1 million quote. It really summarizes why this is a big con.
All taxation in New Jersey and increase every service in our state 4 times over. And look, it worked. And they've been telling every state the same lie ever since. And so far, every state minus 4, including Alabama, have bought into it.
And Greg, that's why this is a debate. This isn't about gambling. What people do privately is something different. This is a government program. One of the founding democratic principles in our country, and I say Democrat with a small d, is no taxation without representation, right? That's what the Boston Tea Party was all about. Mm-hmm. Today, we have, and that's one of our core principles of who we are as a people, as American people. Today, we have a system in our country of taxation by exploitation. Mm. And that's what predatory gambling is, whether it's in the form of state lotteries, brick and mortar casinos, electronic gambling machines, or online gambling, whether in the form of sports or online casino gambling. Okay, we have a system of taxation by exploitation, and the time has come in America where we need to add the principle of no taxation by exploitation, right alongside the democratic principle of no taxation without representation.
Wow. the promise of money. It goes from lotteries. Often they'll put whatever label they need to put on it to make people feel like, yeah, let's put it toward that. Whether it's education, elementary, high school education.
It's whatever they can drag it across the finish line. It's a dead carcass.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, how can we get this? How can we get 50% plus one? And so to get people to either vote for this or to get letters. And so they'll come up with any,
I predict.
It's a naked money grab. Man.
I predict, and at this point in Alabama, we do not have a bill for the 2024 legislative session, gambling bill. But it's coming. We know it's coming, all right? I predict that they're going to probably promise to put this money toward mental health. Have you heard of other states promising that?
Yes. California had a whole referendum in 2022 to try to legalize online sports gambling, and they were going to use the revenue to pay for mental health services and homelessness. And the and the perversity of that, the hypocrisy.
That's circular, isn't it?
Yeah. But the irony is this is an industry that preys upon people with mental health problems.
Yeah.
And it's an industry that creates mental health problems in people. So it's like willfully giving yourself cancer. You know, like it's absolutely dishonest. This industry, what they'll do, and the guys, the legislators that stand up to promote it of both parties, again, incredible hypocrisy because most of these guys don't even gamble themselves.
Yeah. All right. This is Priority Talk Radio. I'm Greg Davis, visiting with Les Bernal. He is the National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling, and you can visit that website. I encourage you to do so. That quote that I gave you is directly from the website. It's documented there, stoppredatorygambling.org. You really need to be informed on this issue. It is going to be the issue of 2024, I do believe, in the state of Alabama, and it's going to have far-reaching consequences for generations to come. All right, let's take a break, and we will come back with another segment, whether you're on audio, radio, or video podcast. We'll be back with another segment. We've still got to talk about sports betting, and Les, I find that is that's the part of this that the people know the least about.
Yeah.
They don't understand what sports betting has become. Because it's not betting on this Saturday's game and then next Saturday's game.
That's right.
It's much different than that now. Than calling a bookie on the phone.
That's right.
And it is very dangerous and very addictive. And I'll tell you this: if you've got young men in your life, you need to hear what we're going to tell you about sports betting.
That's right.
All right, Greg Davis here, Priority Talk Radio, PriorityTalkRadio.com. We'll be back with another segment. Priority Talk Radio, Greg Davis here with you. And we continue our conversation with Les Bernal. He is the National Director of Stop Predatory Gambling. He is with us for a series of segments that are going to air in various formats, both through our radio program, our audio podcast, Priority Talk Radio, and then also on our Priority Talk Radio Facebook page and other video venues. So if you're just joining us and you're jumping into this segment, you're going to want to go back and find the others as well. They pretty much stand alone, each one. You can listen to them separately or in order. It really wouldn't matter. But you definitely want to continue to listen because we are exposing what we believe is a predatory industry. And we're hoping and praying that we can convince enough people in our state not to legalize and bring this into our state. Of course, we do know that gambling happens illegally in our state. Certainly it does. People break the law. And they break all laws, quite honestly. But we have talked about earlier in another part of this conversation that legalizing something has never stopped people from still doing it illegally. That just doesn't work.
It adds to it.
It adds to it. Yeah. That's right. Really, all you do is you move the goalposts for the people who do it illegally.
That's right.
It just changes the game. But
right.
people that break the law break the law. They don't just suddenly line up to be. To just fall in line and follow all the laws and be squeaky clean. That's not the way they operate.
That's right.
So, sports betting, that's something we haven't gotten into. Certainly, sports betting is illegal in the state of Alabama from a commercialized standpoint. Now, as we said earlier, people making bets between themselves or something like that, just personal. Okay, that's not really what we're talking about. Okay, that I don't think that's very wise to do myself. Okay, that's another issue. That's not good stewardship, but that's another issue. But when you start getting into commercialized sports betting, then you're getting into something else. Now, many people think of sports betting as betting on the Alabama or Auburn game on Saturday, but betting on the line of the game, and then you place another bet next Friday for next Saturday's game. And maybe for a long time, maybe that's sort of the way it was. All right, you call your bookie and you get your call, you get it in. But that is not what sports betting is now. Les, tell us what it has become. That maybe many people just don't realize how predatory this has come, especially on young men, and just how addictive it has been made to be because of the access.
Sure. So a couple quick points I want to emphasize right out of the gate is it's already, anyone in Alabama can place a friendly wager with a friend or a coworker already. So I just want to be clear. You can already place a sports bet with each other. What has been illegal in Alabama is you could not run a sports book. Okay, you couldn't be the person taking bets because the business, as we've talked about throughout this series, is inherently it's a form of consumer financial fraud. It's a ripoff. That's why it's been illegal. Okay, so today in our country, we have, and I will say that there's public officials, state legislators of both parties who stand up and say, hey, people are doing this anyways, we should bring this in. What they're referring to is the March Madness brackets, Super Bowl office pools, that type of stuff. Like, again, that's form of social gambling. People have already been doing that. People aren't doing it, they're not running it as a business. It's on the fringe of society. Right, it's just part. It's not being advertised in the middle of games. So I just want to make sure that's clear out of the gate. Mm-hmm. But what's happening today is in America, we have an epidemic of child and teen gambling in every state that has legalized online sports gambling. And the reason for that is, and if you've watched a sporting event in the last 3 years, you know what I'm talking about. Is almost every other advertisement is a relentless, barrage of advertising, luring people in to download these sports gambling apps onto their phones and computers, to go to your local, sometimes even restaurants will have, sports books now.
Sure.
And place bets. And it's not just betting on the outcome of a game. It's betting what's called in-play wagering. So we talked about how addictive electronic gambling machines were. What the gambling industry has tried to do is make the experience of playing online sports gambling or betting on sports the equivalent of playing a slot machine, meaning that you're betting, instead of betting like on the outcome of a game, you're betting every 5 seconds.
You can bet every play.
Yeah, every play of a game, every pitch of a baseball game, every play of a football game. Is the next play going to be a run or a pass?
More than 5 yards or less than 5 yards.
Yeah.
Everything like that.
Anything you can imagine to keep you in constant action, and through the internet they have you in constant access. So it's like literally opening a Las Vegas casino right in your kid's bedroom or in your living room or in your workplace. Okay. And they push you. They constantly are incentivizing you to keep gambling more. If you've taken out, say you realize you've lost too much, they'll send you, hey, here's $100 worth of free bets to try to keep you in constant action because they know if I can keep you gambling, you're gonna keep chasing your losses.
Now, do they really give you $100 of free bets?
Well, they'll give you $100, but you can't pull that money out. You have to place the bets. A lot of times, these big ads you'll see on TV.
But to get the 100, do you have to bet 500?
Yeah, so it depends on the gimmick.
Okay,
but again, commercialized gambling, starting with state lotteries, these guys have been exempt from truth in advertising regulations under the Federal Trade Commission, unlike any other business, because the Federal Trade Commission has let states regulate gambling. Gambling has been seen as a state issue. And so they left it up to states to decide for themselves. And because states are a partner with the industry and the states want the money, the states are making money from this. This industry gets away with business practices that no other industry gets away with, whether it's lotteries, casinos, and now online gambling. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of how it impacts kids, as you have kids today, as young as 8, 9 years old, on playgrounds and school cafeterias, who kids who used to collect baseball cards growing up, now they're talking about parlay bets, which is a way to bet on sports. They're talking about, in-play wagering, those types of activities. And so you have kids today walking in with their parents into Gamblers Anonymous meetings in state after state where this has been happening. And this isn't just like where state lotteries and brick and mortar casinos, the impact of those, they really impact, in terms of the gambling impact, really affects lower income people generally. Mm-hmm. This is an issue that's now impacting, in addition to hitting low-income families, it's also hitting middle-income and upper-income families. If your kid watches sports, they're getting hit by this. And one of the things your listeners need to understand is in the big picture, this isn't even about online sports gambling. The online sports gambling is what gets people to sign up. So whether you're a brick and mortar casino that operates sports gambling, or whether you're an online sports book
like DraftKings and all
DraftKings,
I want to talk some of the names so
MGM,
people know what we're talking about.
Caesars, so on. Like
you can't watch a sporting event without seeing them.
Yeah,
I mean
So, but those companies at their core and where they make the bulk of their profits, it's not on online sports gambling. It's on online casino gambling. So there's presently 6 states in America where they could ram through online casino gambling as well. And so what they do is, whether it's brick and mortar casinos or online sports books, sports gambling brings people in the door. Okay, it gets you to sign up. Online sports books, it gets you to sign up on the app. But then what the goal is to legalize, build a database of gamblers and then cross-market you to the online casino piece. Okay, so now instead of, NFL season is 17 games, right, regular season. But what they really want is you wagering on online slots 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, online blackjack, online roulette, constantly. And they'll incentivize you with free slots play, to cross you over from the sports book onto the online casino piece.
So people are playing casino-style games on their mobile device, on their phone. They don't have to go. They don't have to go to the brick and mortar.
And you should say, like, in the state lotteries today, just to bring up them for 1 second, they're offering these same type of online casino-like games. So that's the future of the industry, is to bring it online into your home. And it's like playing a slot machine, but on your phone, tablet, or computer. And so you can just sit in your pajamas and literally lose your retirement savings, your Social Security check, your kids' college tuition, your rent money, your mortgage check.
Well, I've heard stories of young men, in particular young married men, laying in the bed beside their young wife and basically losing everything they have overnight while their wife sleeps. Maybe they got behind on an NFL or an NBA game that night, and so people need to understand, they start chasing because of their losses. And they don't want to have to tell their wife the next morning, I lost thousands of dollars. So then they can even begin to bet on sports on the other side of the world.
That's right.
In different time zones. And
by sports, we're talking about
sports they've never even heard of.
In my sports, it's not that they're following the team.
No.
They're betting on like Belarusian table tennis games in 3 a.m.
Trying to catch up from what they lost on basketball or football or baseball that night.
They're betting on squash, from India. Squash games, like, has nothing to do with the sport. And it's about keeping them in constant action, because again, we're talking about a known, dangerous, and addictive product that the American Psychiatric Association has recognized as addictive, as dangerous as opioids, cocaine, and heroin. And that's what they're pumping in through the internet in partnership with state government. So Alabama today, like, the evidence from states is damning. The idea that anyone would stand up and say this is good for the people of Alabama it's incredibly dishonest, okay, and dangerous what they're doing.
Let's tell me other countries that have gotten ahead of us on online betting, in particular sports betting. They're starting to scale it back, aren't they? Because of the issues that have come with it, societal issues. They're scaling it back.
Yeah. So a country like Great Britain, the UK, embraced online gambling like no other country. They really, the last 15 years. But now in that country, the pendulum is swinging back because so many young people have been harmed because of online gambling. It's really like it's like gambling fentanyl. You know what I mean? Like why would you allow your kid to use gambling fentanyl? And that's what online sports gambling is like. All right. And so here today in the UK, they're dealing with a lot of major issues there. They have Brexit, they've had COVID, all this other stuff. Some we've been dealing with. But a top 5 issue today in the United Kingdom is gambling reform, because in the words of members of Parliament, they just like we're having an epidemic now of child and teen gambling. They've been suffering from an epidemic of child gambling for almost 10 years now. And so they have a whole generation now of addicts, of young people who become addicts to gambling.
Now, we do say children become exposed to this and get involved in this, and if you think, well, how can they do that? It's not legal. look, your kids can get online and figure it all out.
It's normal. Yeah, they use the parents' credit card.
And I was going to say, it'll show up on your credit card, and you'll be going, oh, my.
It's so easy. They can create what's called a virtual private network where they sign in differently. They create an account in their parents' name, use the parents' credit card. I mean, think how many times parents give their kids credit cards to play video games. Like, you can buy so like a lot of parents have no idea what their kids are doing with this. A lot of times they have an older sibling place bets, or a friend's older sibling place bets for them, or they themselves sometimes will be a bookmaker at school. They themselves start betting. Kids start doing this themselves. It's unreal. So if we talk about, if you don't, we talk to kids about drugs. We talk to them about pornography. The day has come where you need to be talking. If you have grandchildren, kids, nieces and nephews, you need to be talking about your kids about predatory gambling, just like you talk to them about drugs and pornography and other dangerous and addictive products.
Thus, I'm amazed, even here in our state, that how much sports betting is promoted by legitimate outlets, media outlets. They promote it even though it's illegal.
Yeah,
that's all they talk about.
Yeah,
it's and how you can call this number and go to this website, and it's illegal in our state. I don't know how you can promote something so heavily to the public and encouraging them to do something that is against the law.
Yeah. So the reason why Stop Predatory Gambling is the most politically diverse movement in the country. We pull from the political right and the political left. It's one of the few things that people can agree on, that we should reform this as well. And the reason for that is there's in this country, this in America's most neglected major problem. We have this gambling power that exists. It's made up of gambling operators, our state government officials and federal officials of both political parties, big media companies. Okay, they've come together in this kind of cartel to promote these dangerous and addictive forms of gambling to profit on the expense of the American people. Okay, so you have media companies like ESPN, your local sports networks, all these guys promoting. They're making money from all the advertising.
And not just those. I'm talking our local outlets.
Yeah, the local newspapers
in a state where it's illegal.
Local newspapers are making money from this. It's funding newspapers have been suffering, so now they have a whole sports staff dedicated to talking about sports gambling because the gambling operators make so much. It's
very dangerous, and if you've got young men in your life in particular, kids, teenagers particularly, college age,
they're the
up
bullseye.
into young adulthood, they're in the bullseye, they're after them. It's marketed as though you can't even
It's
enjoy.
an epidemic. That's the only way to describe it. There's an epidemic of teen and child gambling in America.
You can't even enjoy watching sports unless you bet on it.
Yeah, and I mentioned this, the New York State government said the number one demographic calling into the gambling addiction hotline today is young adults and teenagers.
All right, be aware, my friends. Sports betting, very dangerous. This is a series of segments, conversations with Les Bernal with the Stop Predatory Gambling. He's the national director. Much of this information at stoppredatorygambling.org. All right, let's take a break, and we'll come back with another segment. This is Priority Talk Radio. This is Priority Talk Radio. Greg Davis here, hosting a series of conversational segments with Les Bernal from Stop Predatory Gambling. He's the national director, and we've been had an overarching conversation about the dangers, the predatory nature of gambling, and of course we're doing so because of what we know is a big push towards comprehensive gambling in the state of Alabama, and we want to make sure all sides of the issue are known. The side that wants gambling, they get their message out real well. And so we want to make sure the other sides of it are told as well, the dangers and the nature, the pure nature of what this is. So we have talked about in these segments a wide-ranging, overview of all aspects, really, I think, of gambling. And let's talk, though, the one thing we probably haven't touched on, Les, is responsible gambling. Does that exist?
Yeah. So we use that phrase in quotes. Okay, responsible gambling is a phrase engineered by the gambling industry in partnership with these state problem gambling councils, including here in Alabama, to create the impression that somehow people are being helped, right? Because two-thirds of the public doesn't gamble at all. And as we've talked about throughout this series, that the business model, whether it's for state lotteries, brick-and-mortar casinos, online sports gambling, electronic gambling machines, it's based on the addicted gambler. They don't have a business without the gambler. So, and so it's just a made-up phrase to create the impression that somehow people are being protected. But so the two, so it's just a PR campaign. And so there's two key things I want to emphasize about that. Is the question I love to ask proponents, like the legislators that carry the water for the gambling industry, is I'll say, what % of gambling profits is based upon turning citizens into addicted gamblers? So how much money comes from addicted gamblers? Okay, there's at least a dozen independent studies from the last decade that show addicted gamblers generate up to 60% of total gambling revenues. Online gambling, it represents 86% of online gambling profits come from 5% of the players. The whole business model is based on addiction. State lotteries, this is right in the New York Times, 70 to 80% of lottery profits come from 10% of lottery gamblers. So the whole business model is getting people addicted. Okay, as a government program, we're doing that. So that's one key thing. And the other question I'd love to ask is, what % of gambling profits comes from people who follow so-called responsible gambling codes of conduct? Because you hear all these, even the NFL, they're all advertising, responsible gambling. So what % of those profits come from that? Well, Natasha Shull, who's the nation's leading expert on gambling technology and electronic gambling machines, she wrote a very prominent book that was got on 60 Minutes to talk about it, called Addiction by Design. And in her book, she references that there was 75% of players walk into a casino as so-called responsible gamblers, like the people who don't gamble beyond their means. They represent 4% of gambling profits. They're virtually irrelevant to the. So that's why this part of the whole con is that people, people know this is they
act like they want responsible gamblers, but that's not what they really want.
Their business model is based on getting you to be out of control. And the last thing I want to briefly mention is there's a whole marketplace today for non-alcoholic beer, non-alcoholic wine, non-alcoholic spirits. Okay, you think there'd be a gap for a commercialized gambling operator whose primary focus is responsible gambling. Okay, in the entire world, there's not a single gambling operator who markets themselves as the quote-unquote, we're the responsible gambling operator. And the reason for that is it's not financially viable. There's no business in commercialized gambling without the addicted gambler. So you can't do this in a way. When they talk about we're going to protect people, all this stuff, the whole business model is about exploiting and cheating people.
What about the ones that, whether it's online or in person, where they'll allow you to set limits ahead of time so you can't lose any more money? It is voluntary.
Yeah. They know. It's like almost every state has laws. Like if I'm a bartender and I keep serving you drinks, you know what I mean? Like the whole definition of being an addict means you're the absence of free will. So that somehow the addict is going to step in and be like, oh yeah, I have a problem. Like that's how addiction works. There's a legal responsibility. Every other company has a legal duty of care to its customer. This is the only business that gets away without having a legal duty of care. And for one reason only, and that's because they partner with state governments. And that's why no state attorney general in this country has ever brought consumer protection litigation against a gambling operator because the state is a partner to it. Okay, it's putting Dracula in charge of the blood bank.
Yeah. Les Bernal with Stop Predatory Gambling. Tell us about the work that the organization does, which I'm happy to be a part of. Yeah. You're here in Alabama helping us these days, but tell us about the work that you do across the nation, the organization does, and the foundation.
Sure. So we're in all 50 states in this country. We're a national nonprofit or a public charity, and our mission is to reveal the truth behind commercialized gambling operators to prevent more victims. We're a national advocacy network made up of individuals and partner groups that come from all political stripes. So we pull from the political right and the political left. I like to say we're the most politically diverse movement in the country, and that's something we're very proud of. And our funding itself we don't take any money from the gambling industry. It just comes from the selfless giving of our board, and from mostly small contributions from individuals across the country and a handful of foundations. And we need a race. If you're someone who cares about this issue, we need your help, both from a time standpoint and financially. We need your help. And the last thing I just want to emphasize in terms of what we stand for as a movement is we believe at our core, this isn't about gambling. This is about our values as a nation, that we believe people are worth more than money. We believe that in the dignity of every human person, and that no one is expendable. And this is a government program that renders millions of Americans as expendable, as roadkill. It's taxation by exploitation, and it's been the experiment with legalized gambling in this country has failed, and it's time that we ended this failed policy. And Alabama is a better place today because you haven't gone down this road. And then in terms of the daily work that we do an endless amount of interviews with national, state, and local media about putting a spotlight on the impact that predatory gambling has had on society and how it's failed America.
I know, and with the Super Bowl coming up, there'll be a big emphasis on that because it's a big topic around that time of year.
Yeah, we collaborate with state coalitions like here in Alabama of all political stripes to prevent extreme forms of predatory gambling from being brought into states. We kind of spotlight the truth behind the industry, what's really happening. We produce fact sheets, white papers, that type of thing to research to identify what the issues are. And then the last thing we do is we really provide a lot of expert testimony before Congress and state legislatures and local bodies of government to really say why states and why local communities should not embrace
which
this.
you've done here in Alabama for us on occasion. Well, great work, and they do lobby in D.C. and are trying to attack this from a national level, from a federal level. So if you want to support legislation that would hinder the gambling movement across America, it's got to be done at the federal level, really. I mean, we're going to work on the state level. But
if you want a good fight and one that's you want to be involved in America's most neglected major problem, if you're passionate about the future of your state and your country, this is your issue.
Yeah, and I would encourage you doing a lot of great videos on social media, little short snippets that give a lot of great information like you've done in this series of segments. People follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It's all out there. Stop Predatory Gambling.
That's right. You
can find it across all. And the go-to resource for the kind of information that we've shared about gambling on this series of segments is at stoppredatorygambling.org. So if you want to know the other side of the story, besides what you're going to hear in the media and the public mostly, head to stoppredatorygambling.org. Les, it's been a pleasure, my friend, and we will continue to fight the good fight.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.